The carriage wheels ground to a halt on the cobblestones of Thornfield Village, and Hadrian Ashworth, the seventh Duke of Ashworth, felt the weight of 5 years pressing against his chest like a stone. He had not wanted to return, had spent half a decade avoiding this place, burying himself in London society, in Parliament, in anything that kept him from remembering. But duty called, as it always did for men of his station. Venetia Carstairs sat across from him, her pale blue eyes surveying the quaint village square with barely concealed disdain. She was everything a duchess should be. Poised, connected, wealthy beyond measure, and utterly without warmth. His grandmother had chosen well. "Charming," Venetia said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I suppose one must endure the country for appearances." Hadrian didn't respond. His attention had snagged on something outside the carriage window. A small figure darting between market stalls. A boy, perhaps 4 years old, chasing a ball that had escaped his grasp. The child turned. Hadrian's blood turned to ice. Dark hair fell across the boy's forehead in an unruly wave. His jaw, still soft with youth, already carried the distinctive Ashworth angle. But it was the eyes that stopped Hadrian's heart entirely. Gray-blue, the exact shade that had stared back at him from every mirror since childhood. The exact shade that marked every Ashworth portrait hanging in the gallery at Ashworth Park. Impossible. "Your Grace?" Venetia's voice came from somewhere distant. "You've gone quite pale." The boy laughed at something, a sound like bells, and a woman emerged from the milliner's shop to scoop him into her arms. She wore a simple dress of faded green, her auburn hair pinned beneath a modest bonnet. She looked tired, worn by years that should have been kinder to her. She looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded square. Serene. The name crashed through him like cannon fire. Serene Whitmore, the vicar's daughter who had vanished from Thornfield 5 years ago without a word of explanation. The woman who had sworn she loved him, then disappeared the very night he'd planned to ask for her hand. The woman he had spent 5 years trying to forget. Her face drained of color. She clutched the boy closer, instinctively protective, and that single gesture told Hadrian everything he needed to know. The boy was his. He was out of the carriage before conscious thought could intervene. Behind him, Venetia called his name in sharp confusion. Ahead, Serene was already retreating, pushing through the crowd with the desperate urgency of a hunted creature. "Serene!" His voice carried across the square, commanding, absolute. Several villagers turned to stare. She stopped. Her shoulders stiffened, but she didn't run. Perhaps she knew there was nowhere left to hide. When she turned to face him, her expression was a careful mask of composure, but her eyes betrayed her. Fear, defiance, and something else he couldn't name warred beneath the surface. "Your Grace." Her voice was steady, but her arms tightened around the child. "I wasn't aware you'd returned." "Clearly." He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the faint lines of exhaustion around her eyes, the calluses on her hands that hadn't existed 5 years ago, close enough to see his own features reflected in miniature on the face of the boy who watched him with open curiosity. "Mama," the child said, tugging at her sleeve. "Who's the tall man?" Hadrian felt something crack inside his chest. "No one, my love." Serene's voice wavered. "Just someone Mama used to know." "Don't." The word came out harsher than he intended. "Don't you dare tell him I'm no one." Serene's chin lifted, that familiar spark of defiance he remembered so well. "What would you have me say? The truth? That his father abandoned us before he was born? That we've survived 5 years without a single word, a single coin, a single acknowledgement of his existence?" The accusation struck him like a physical blow. "I never knew." "Of course you didn't." Her laugh was bitter, hollow. You made certain of that when you left. When I left. Confusion twisted through his rage. You're the one who vanished. You're the one who sent back every letter unopened. You're the one who... I sent nothing back. Her voice cracked. I received nothing to send. They stared at each other, 5 years of pain and misunderstanding stretching between them like a chasm. Hadrian. Venetia's voice cut through the moment, sharp and cold. She had descended from the carriage, her silk skirts incongruous against the dusty cobblestones. What is the meaning of this? Who is this woman? The question hung in the air. Around them, the village had gone silent. Market vendors paused mid-transaction. Women clutched their baskets and whispered behind their hands. Every eye in Thornfield watched the Duke of Ashworth standing in the square and staring at a boy who wore his face. Hadrian, Venetia repeated, her voice tight with warning. We have an engagement celebration to attend. Your grandmother is expecting us. Yes, his grandmother. The woman who had orchestrated every aspect of his life since his parents' death. The woman who had conveniently arranged for him to be called to London the very week Seren disappeared. The woman who had assured him that Seren wanted nothing to do with him, that she had taken money to leave and never return. He had believed her. What a fool he had been. What is his name? Hadrian asked quietly, his eyes fixed on the child. Serene hesitated. Something flickered across her face. Pain, perhaps, or resignation. Milo, she said finally. His name is Milo. Milo, the name of Hadrian's father. The name he had mentioned once, almost in a moment of rare vulnerability, as the name he would give his firstborn son someday. She had remembered. We need to talk, he said, privately. We have nothing to discuss. We have 4 years of everything to discuss. He took a step closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. That boy is mine, Seren. Don't insult us both by denying it. Her eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears away before they could fall. He's mine. I raised him alone. I kept him fed and clothed and safe without any help from you or your family. Whatever claim you think you have, Your Grace, you forfeited it the moment you chose your title over me. I chose nothing. The words tore from him. I was lied to. We both were. Before she could respond, before he could say anything else, the church bell told the hour. Venetia appeared at his elbow, or her gloved hand closing around his arm with possessive firmness. Darling, she said sweetly, her smile razor-sharp. Your grandmother sent word. The guests are arriving. Whatever. Business you have here can surely wait. Her gaze swept over Serene with undisguised contempt, lingering on the boy just long enough to calculate, to understand. Of course, Venetia continued, her voice dripping false kindness. Perhaps the poor woman and her child would benefit from some charitable attention. I'm sure the parish has resources for those in difficult circumstances. Seren's face flushed with humiliation, but she said nothing. She simply gathered Milo closer and began to turn away. Tomorrow, Hadrian called after her. Ashworth Park, 10 o'clock. We will finish this conversation. She paused, but didn't look back. That wasn't a request. On Seren, it was a summons. The silence that followed was answer enough. Ashworth Park loomed against the evening sky like a monument to everything Seren had lost. She stood at the window of her cramped rooms above the bakery, watching the distant lights flicker in the great house's windows. 5 years ago, she had walked those halls as a welcome guest. Hadrian had shown her the library, the gardens, the hidden alcoves, where they had stolen kisses away from prying eyes. Now she was summoned there, like a servant called to account. She had returned to Thornfield 2 years ago, after her father's death left the vicarage empty, and her options exhausted. The village that had once been home became a place of quiet exile, where she worked in the Penny's bakery and raised her son in the shadow of the life that might have been. "Mama," Milo's voice drifted from the narrow bed they shared. "Are you sad?" She turned, forcing a smile. "No, my darling. Just thinking." "About the tall man?" Her heart clenched. "Yes, about the tall man." Milo considered this with the gravity only children possess. "He had eyes like mine, out of the mouths of babes." "Yes, he did." "Is he a relation?" The word came out carefully, something he had learned from the baker's wife. "Mrs. Penny says relations have the same eyes sometimes." Seren crossed to the bed, sitting on its edge and brushing the hair from his forehead. He was so beautiful, her boy, so innocent of the complicated circumstances of his birth. "He's someone I knew a long time ago," she said carefully. "Before you were born. Did you love him?" The question struck her breathless. Why do you ask that?" "You looked at him the way Mrs. Penny looks at Mr. Penny, before she remembers she's cross with him." Despite everything, Seren laughed. "You're too clever for your own good." "That's what you always say." He yawned, burrowing deeper into the thin blankets. "Will you see him tomorrow?" "I have to." "Will I come?" She hesitated. Everything in her screamed to keep Milo far from Ashworth Park, far from Hadrian's world, far from the grandmother who had threatened and bribed and manipulated to ensure Seren vanished without a trace. But Hadrian had seen him now. The secret she had guarded for 4 years was no longer a secret. "We'll see," she said finally. "Now sleep." She watched him drift off, his breathing evening into the rhythms of childhood slumber. Then she returned to the window and the distant lights of the life that had almost been hers. The next morning came too quickly. Seren dressed in her best gown, a practical navy wool that had seen better days but remained respectable. She pinned her hair with more care than usual, hating herself for the vanity but unable to stop. If she was walking into the lion's den, she would do so with her head held high. Milo chattered happily during the walk to Ashworth Park, delighted by the adventure. He had never been beyond the village. The sweeping lawns and ornamental gardens were wonders to him, each new sight eliciting gasps of amazement. "Is this a castle, Mama?" "It's a great house, where very important people live." "Are we important?" She squeezed his hand. "We are important to each other, and that's what matters." The butler who answered the massive front doors looked at her with barely concealed recognition. Jenkins had served the family for 30 years. He knew exactly who she was, what she had once been to the Duke. "Miss Whitmore," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "His Grace is expecting you," and his gaze dropped to Milo. Something shifted in his weathered features. "And the young master." Young master. The title sent a chill down Serene's spine. They were escorted through corridors she remembered too well, past portraits of Ashworth ancestors, whose disapproving eyes seemed to follow her every step. Milo pressed closer to her side, intimidated despite his earlier excitement. The library doors opened, and her breath caught. Hadrian stood before the fireplace, undressed in formal mourning attire that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, the lean lines of his figure. He was more handsome than she remembered, matured into a man where a young idealist had once stood. But the softness she had loved was gone, replaced by hard edges and guarded eyes. He was not alone. An elderly woman occupied the chair nearest the fire, her posture rigid with aristocratic disdain. The Dowager Duchess of Ashworth, Hadrian's grandmother. The woman who had paid Serene's father to send her away, who had threatened to destroy her family if she ever contacted Hadrian again, who had sworn that the Duke would never marry so far beneath his station. And beside the Dowager, arranged on a settee like an ornament, sat Venetia Carstairs. Her smile was serene, her eyes calculating. She wore a mourning dress that cost more than Seren earned in a year. "Ah!" The dowager's voice cut through the room like frost. "The vicar's daughter. I wondered when the past would crawl back." Seren's grip on Milo's hand tightened. "Your Grace." "Don't bother with courtesies. We both know you're not here for tea." The dowager's gaze dropped to Milo, and something flickered in her expression. Recognition, quickly suppressed. "Though I see you've brought leverage." "Grandmother." Hadrian's voice carried a warning. "Don't grandmother me, Hadrian. You've created a spectacular mess, and now we must clean it up." The dowager gestured sharply. "Miss Whitmore, I'll give you credit for patience. Most women in your position would have come demanding money years ago. I don't want your money. Everyone wants money, dear. The question is simply how much." "That's enough." Hadrian stepped forward, positioning himself between Serene and his grandmother. "Miss Whitmore is here because I asked her to come. Whatever arrangement we reach will be negotiated fairly, not through intimidation." Venetia laughed, a delicate sound that somehow contained multitudes of condescension. "Arrangement? Hadrian, darling, what arrangement could there possibly be? Our engagement was announced last week. Invitations have been sent. The wedding is in 6 weeks. Plans change. The temperature in the room dropped. Excuse me?" Venetia's composure cracked, revealing something harder beneath. "You cannot be serious. I have a son." Hadrian's voice was quiet but immovable. "A son I knew nothing about until yesterday. A son whose mother I was led to believe had abandoned me." His gaze cut to his grandmother. "Care to explain that, grandmother?" The dowager didn't flinch. "I did what was necessary to protect this family. By lying to me? By driving away the woman I loved? By removing an unsuitable attachment before it destroyed your future." The dowager rose, her cane striking the floor with authority. "You were young, foolish, blinded by infatuation. The vicar's daughter had no fortune, no connections, nothing to offer except pretty eyes and the temporary amusement of forbidden romance. I saved you from a disastrous mistake." "You saved nothing." Hadrian's voice shook with barely contained rage. "You stole 4 years of my son's life. You condemned Seren to raise him alone in poverty. Why, you built this family's future on lies. And I would do it again." The dowager met his fury without wavering. "Because that is what duty requires. Sentiment is a luxury we cannot afford." Seren stood frozen, one hand on Milo's shoulder, watching the confrontation unfold. This was not what she had expected. She had braced for accusations, for blame, for Hadrian to side with his family against her. Instead, he was defending her. "Why?" Milo tugged at her skirt. "Mama," he whispered, "why is everyone shouting?" The small voice cut through the tension like a blade. Every adult in the room turned to look at the boy who watched them with wide, uncertain eyes. "I don't like it here," Milo said, his lower lip trembling. "Can we go home?" Something in Hadrian's expression shattered. He crossed the room in 3 strides, then stopped just short of where Seren stood with their son. Slowly, carefully, he knelt until he was at eye level with the boy. "Milo." He spoke the name like a prayer. "I'm sorry we frightened you. Grown-ups sometimes argue about things that don't matter very much." Milo studied him with solemn intensity. "Mrs. Penny says arguments are like storms. They blow over if you wait. Mrs. Penny sounds very wise. She makes the best apple tarts in the village." A ghost of a smile crossed Hadrian's face. "Does she? Perhaps you could introduce me sometime." Milo glanced up at Seren, seeking permission. She gave a small nod, not trusting her voice. "I could," Milo said carefully. "If Mama says it's all right." "Everything will be all right." Hadrian looked up at Seren, and the raw honesty in his eyes stole her breath. I promise. Behind them, Venetia made a sound of pure disgust. This is absurd. You cannot mean to acknowledge this child. The scandal alone would— Miss Carstairs. Hadrian didn't look at her. Our engagement is over. The silence that followed was absolute. The words hung in the air like smoke after cannon fire. Venetia Carstairs rose from the settee, her composure crumbling into something ugly. You cannot do this. I have planned for this marriage. My family has planned. Connections have been promised. Agreements made. Agreements I never consented to. Hadrian stood, keeping his body between Venetia and the woman and child behind him. Our engagement was arranged by my grandmother, without my knowledge, while I was managing estates in Scotland. I returned to find invitations already sent. And you went along with it. Venetia's voice rose. For 3 weeks, Aunt Hadrian, you played the part of devoted fiancé perfectly well. What changed? This? She gestured at Seren with contempt. Some country girl who trapped you with a bastard she claims is yours? Careful. The warning in Hadrian's voice was lethal. Very careful, Miss Carstairs. Or what? You'll ruin me. Your family needs mine. The Carstairs shipping routes, the parliamentary connections, the fortune that would restore everything your father's foolish investments lost. Venetia's laugh was brittle. Don't pretend this is about romance. Your grandmother chose me because I was practical, because I understood that marriages of our class are transactions, not fairy tales. Venetia, the dowager began. No. Venetia whirled on her, years of careful deportment abandoned. You promised me a coronet. You promised me Ashworth Park and a seat at every table that matters. You swore he would come around, that his reluctance was merely grief over his father. You said nothing about a mistress hidden in the village. I was never his mistress. Seren's voice emerged stronger than she felt. Not that you would understand the distinction. Venetia's eyes narrowed to slits. The vicar's daughter speaks. How charming. Tell me, Miss Whitmore, did you plan this? Wait until the engagement was announced, then parade your child through the village at precisely the right moment. I did nothing of the sort. How convenient that you happened to be shopping in the square at the exact hour of his arrival. How fortunate that your son's face broadcasts his parentage to anyone with eyes. I didn't know he was coming. Seren's temper flared despite her efforts. I have spent 5 years believing he abandoned me. 5 years raising my son alone while working my fingers raw. I wanted nothing from him or his family then, and I want nothing now except to be left in peace. Then leave. Venetia's smile was vicious. Take your child and go. There are still ways to manage this quietly. A small sum to relocate, perhaps somewhere quite far away. Australia is lovely, I hear. Enough. Hadrian's command silenced the room. Miss Carstairs, you will leave Ashworth Park within the hour. Whatever agreements exist between our families are dissolved. My solicitors will handle the details. Your grandmother will never permit. My grandmother does not control this estate. I do. He turned to the dowager, and something painful passed between them. I have indulged your machinations out of respect for my father's memory, but not in this. Not where my son is concerned. The dowager studied him for a long moment. Then, to Seren's shock, she nodded slowly. Venetia, dear, she said, her voice suddenly weary. Perhaps it would be best if you return to your family's townhouse in London. There will be time to discuss the situation when tempers have cooled. Venetia's face purpled with rage, but she had enough breeding to recognize dismissal. This isn't over, she hissed at Hadrian. My father will hear of this. The scandal will be managed. The dowager's tone brooked no argument. I'll go. For a moment, Venetia looked ready to explode. Then she gathered her skirts with exaggerated dignities and swept from the room, leaving only the cold perfume of expensive roses in her wake. The library fell silent. Milo, who had watched the entire scene with growing confusion, tugged again at Seren's skirt. "Mama? Is the angry lady gone?" "Yes, darling. She's gone." "Good. I didn't like her." He considered for a moment. She smelled like Grandmother Abbott's funeral. Despite everything, a choked laugh escaped Hadrian's throat. He ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "Well," the dowager said dryly, "the child has inherited the Ashworth talent for observation. This changes nothing between us, Grandmother." Hadrian's voice was cold. "You lied to me. For 5 years. I did what I thought was right. You were wrong." Another silence stretched between them, heavy with decades of complicated history. Then the dowager rose, leaning on her cane with more weight than Seren had ever seen. "Perhaps I was." The admission seemed to cost her greatly. "But what's done is done. The question now is what happens next." Her gaze shifted to Seren. "I assume you have demands." "I have nothing." "Everyone has demands, Miss Whitmore. You simply haven't named yours yet." The dowager moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. "I suggest you think carefully about what you want, because once the Tun learns of this child's existence, you'll be pulled into a world you cannot escape. Every fortune hunter, every gossip, every schemer in London will take an interest in the Duke's illegitimate heir." "Milo is not illegitimate." Hadrian's voice was steel. "I intend to acknowledge him formally, legitimize him through whatever legal means exist." The dowager's eyebrows rose. "That will require marriage." "I'm aware." Seren's heart stopped. "What?" Hadrian turned to her, and for the first time since their confrontation in the village, she saw a crack in his armor. Beneath the ducal authority and controlled rage was something she recognized. The young man who had promised her the moon, the man who had wept in her arms when his father died, the man she had loved with every fiber of her being. "Not like this," he said quickly. "I'm not proposing, not yet. You don't trust me. You have no reason to trust me. But I want you to consider an arrangement." An arrangement. The word tasted bitter. How very aristocratic. A temporary arrangement. Stay at Ashworth Park as my guest. Let me know, my son. Let society see that we are navigating this situation respectfully. In the meantime, I will investigate what happened 5 years ago. Who intercepted letters? Who paid whom? Where the lies began. And then what? Then you decide. He took a careful step toward her. "If, after you have the truth, you want nothing more to do with me, I'll let you go. I'll establish funds for Milo's care and education without conditions. You'll never want for anything, and I will never force my presence on you. And if the truth changes things, then perhaps we can discuss a more permanent arrangement." His voice softened. "The one that gives Milo the legitimacy he deserves, and gives us a chance to discover whether what we had is truly dead." Behind him, the dowager made a sound of impatience. "You're offering her the world on a platter, Hadrian. A woman of her station should be grateful for even half such consideration. A woman of any station deserves the choice to accept or refuse." He didn't look away from Seren. "What do you say? She should refuse." Every survival instinct she had developed over 5 years screamed that this was madness, dangerous, improper, and destined to end in disaster. She didn't belong in this world of dukes and balls and society matrons. She was a merchant's daughter whose father had lost his business to bad investments and worse luck. Her brother was a dreamer who chased schemes with men like Felix Grimley. Her mother took in mending to help make ends meet. But when would she ever get another chance like this? To live in a duke's house, to attend balls and parties, to wear beautiful dresses and be treated even temporarily like she belonged. To experience just once what life could be like without constantly calculating pennies and making do with last year's ribbons. 3 conditions, she heard herself say. Hadrian's eyebrow rose. You're negotiating with me? You need me as much as I need this opportunity. That makes us equals, Your Grace, at least in this. The dowager made a displeased sound. Hadrian's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. Interest, perhaps, or respect. Name your conditions. First, I am not your mistress. I will not be installed in some private wing while the world whispers about the Duke's unfortunate entanglement. If I stay here, it's as a respectable guest. Separate rooms, full propriety. Agreed. Second, Milo's welfare comes before any negotiation between us. Whatever happens with the truth, with our past, with any future arrangement, his needs are not bargaining chips. Of course. Third, she steadied her voice. If I decide to leave, for any reason, at any time, you do not pursue me. You do not send solicitors, or investigators, or anyone else. You let me go. Hadrian was silent for a long moment. Counteroffer, he said finally. If you decide to leave, you tell me why. In person. And you give me one chance to address whatever drove you away. After that, I'll honor your wishes. Sarin considered. It was reasonable, and more reasonable than she had expected. Agreed. Hadrian extended his hand. The gesture was oddly formal, a business arrangement sealed between 2 people who had once shared everything. She took it. His grip was warm and firm, his palm rough in ways it hadn't been 5 years ago. He had changed, too, she realized. Shaped by time and loss and responsibilities she couldn't imagine. Perhaps they were both strangers now, wearing the faces of people who had once been in love. Welcome to Ashworth Park, Miss Whitmore. His voice was carefully neutral, but his thumb brushed once across her knuckles before he released her hand. I hope you'll find your stay enlightening. As if on cue, the library door burst open. A young woman flew into the room in a whirlwind of honey-colored curls and lavender silk, her face flushed with excitement. She stopped short at the sight of them, her gaze bouncing between Hadrian, Serene, and the small boy who watched her with round eyes. Oh, she breathed. So it's true. Hadrian, you complete and utter fool. Is this her? Is this the child? She didn't wait for answers, instead dropping into a crouch before Milo with a brilliant smile. Hello, little one. I'm Linnea. I think I might be your aunt. Milo looked up at Seren with confusion and wonder. Mama, he whispered. I've never had an aunt before. Seren's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. What had she agreed to? The green suite was larger than the entire floor above the bakery, where Seren and Milo had lived for 3 years. Milo stood in the center of the bedroom, turning in slow circles with his mouth hanging open. Silk curtains framed windows that overlooked manicured gardens stretching toward a distant lake. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in fabrics softer than anything Seren had ever touched. A separate sitting room connected through carved double doors, complete with its own fireplace and writing desk. Mama. Milo's whisper was reverent. Are we staying in a palace? It's called a great house, darling, remember? But it's so big. He ran to the window, pressing his small hands against the glass. There's a lake, a real lake, with swans. Mama, do you see the swans? She did see them. She saw everything. The opulence that had once felt welcoming now pressed against her like accusation. 5 years ago, she had walked these halls dreaming of a future here. Now she was a guest on sufferance, her position precarious, and her son's future uncertain. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Miss Whitmore?" A young maid with kind brown eyes and copper hair, tucked beneath a starched cap, entered with a curtsy. "I'm Brinley. His Grace has assigned me to attend you during your stay. Is there anything you require?" Serene opened her mouth to refuse, to insist she needed no attending. But Brinley was already moving through the room with practiced efficiency, laying out fresh towels, adjusting curtains, building up the fire. "The young master's room is through here." Brinley opened a connecting door to reveal a smaller but equally luxurious chamber, clearly prepared for a child. Toys lined the shelves. Picture books sat stacked on a low table. A rocking horse stood in one corner, its mane made of real horsehair. Milo gasped with pure joy. "Now, can I?" He looked at Seren with desperate hope. "Can I play with the horse?" "Of course, darling." He was across the room in seconds, climbing onto the horse with the fearless abandon of childhood. His laughter echoed off the high ceilings, bright and uncomplicated. Brinley watched with a soft smile. "He's a beautiful child, miss. Has his father's look about him." The casual observation struck Seren silent. "Forgive me." Brinley colored slightly. "I spoke out of turn." "No." Seren found her voice. "You spoke the truth. It's simply strange, hearing it acknowledged so openly. The household knows, miss. Word travels fast below stairs." Brinley lowered her voice. "For what it's worth, most of us are glad you've come. His Grace has been different since his father passed. Distant. Cold. But when he came back from the village yesterday, after seeing the young master," she paused, "something changed in him. Something woke up." Before Seren could respond, another knock came at the door. Linnea swept in without waiting for invitation, her arms full of fabric samples and fashion plates. "There you are. I've been to Madame Fortier in the village. She's dreadfully provincial, but competent enough, and she's agreed to come tomorrow for fittings. You'll need everything. Day dresses, afternoon dresses, evening gowns, riding habits. I don't ride. You'll learn. And Milo will need proper clothes too, country attire for running about, but also formal wear for when he's introduced to society." Introduced to society? Serene's stomach dropped. "Linnea, we've agreed to nothing permanent. I'm here to discover the truth, yes. Aunt Hadrian told me the whole absurd arrangement." Linnea waved dismissively. "But while you're here, you'll need to look the part. The county families will call within the week. The Viscount Thornbury and his awful wife. The Marchioness of Kelworth, who collects gossip like others collect china. Sir Aldous Pemberton, who will absolutely fall in love with you because he falls in love with everyone. This is too much. Nonsense. This is the minimum." Linnea settled onto the settee, arranging her skirts with casual elegance. "Seren. May I call you Seren? I feel we should dispense with formalities, given you're the mother of my nephew. You seem remarkably calm about all this." "I'm remarkably furious, actually." Linnea's bright demeanor flickered, revealing something harder beneath. "My grandmother lied to Hadrian for 5 years. She stole his chance at happiness and condemned you to struggle alone. She kept me from knowing I had a nephew." Her voice caught. "I always wanted to be an aunt. Hadrian was supposed to marry and have children, and I was supposed to spoil them rotten. Instead, grandmother decided his choices weren't suitable and arranged his entire life without consulting him. You didn't know about what she did? I was 15 when you disappeared, away at finishing school in Bath. By the time I returned, you were gone, and Hadrian refused to speak of it. I assumed." She trailed off. "I assumed what grandmother wanted me to assume. that you'd grown tired of waiting for a duke who might never marry you, that you'd taken money and left. The accusation stung, even secondhand. I would never have taken money. I know that now. Linnea reached across to squeeze her hand, and so does Hadrian, though it may take him time to say so. He's been carrying this wound for years, believing you chose money over him. It made him hard, Seren. Hard and bitter, and convinced that everyone eventually betrays him for profit. Through the connecting door, Milo's delighted laughter continued as he rode the rocking horse into imaginary battle. I carried wounds too, Seren said quietly. I believed he abandoned me when he learned about the child, that the thought of a vicar's daughter bearing his heir was so repugnant he couldn't even send word of rejection himself. You were both victims of grandmother's scheming. Linnea's expression darkened. But the question is whether either of you can move past the damage she caused. Whether there's anything left to salvage. Seren had no answer. That night, dinner was served in the small family dining room rather than the formal hall. Hadrian sat at the head of the table, Linnea to his right, Seren to his left. A special place had been set for Milo beside his mother, complete with cushions to boost him to proper height. The boy attacked his roast chicken with enthusiasm, momentarily forgetting his manners in the face of food finer than anything he'd ever tasted. Slowly, darling, Seren murmured. No one will take it away. Milo looked up with guilty eyes. Sorry, Mama. It's quite all right. Hadrian's voice was gentle. When I was your age, I once ate an entire plum cake meant for my mother's garden party. I was sick for 2 days, but I regretted nothing. Milo giggled. Did you get in trouble? Tremendous trouble. But my father thought it was hilarious, so my punishment was considerably lighter than my mother intended. What's a plum cake? The most delicious thing in existence. I'll have Cook make one especially for you. The easy warmth in Hadrian's voice made Seren's chest ache. This was what Milo had missed. What they both had missed. Simple moments of family and belonging, stolen by lies they hadn't even known existed. What else had been stolen? What else might never be recovered? 3 days passed in a blur of fittings and introductions, and the overwhelming strangeness of living in luxury. Then the summons came. The Dowager wishes to see you in her private sitting room. The footman's face betrayed nothing. Alone. Seren's blood chilled, but she nodded and followed. The Dowager's quarters occupied the east wing, removed from the main household by a long gallery lined with Ashworth ancestors. Their painted eyes tracked Seren's progress with silent judgment. Dukes and duchesses, earls and countesses, an unbroken line of aristocratic breeding stretching back centuries. She did not belong among them. The Dowager sat in a high-backed chair by the window, positioned to catch the morning light. She looked older than she had in the library, her face carved with lines that spoke of exhaustion rather than cruelty. Sit. She gestured to a chair across from her. We have matters to discuss. Seren sat, folding her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. You're afraid of me. The Dowager's observation was clinical. Good. You should be. I've destroyed women far more powerful than you. Is that why you summoned me? To threaten me again? I summoned you because my grandson has made his intentions clear, and I must decide how to respond. The Dowager studied her with unsettling intensity. 5 years ago, I paid your father £300 to send you away. Did you know that? The confirmation struck like a physical blow. I suspected. He took the money readily enough, didn't even negotiate, simply packed your belongings and put you on a coach to Whitby before you could protest. The Dowager's lip curled. Such paternal devotion. My father did what he thought was best for the family. Your father did what was easiest. There's a difference. The dowager leaned forward. I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone, Miss Whitmore. Not my grandson. Not my granddaughter. Not even my late son. Seren waited, barely breathing. I was in love once, before my marriage. A young man of no particular fortune, but considerable charm. We planned to elope. My father discovered us and had the young man pressed into naval service. He died at sea 3 months later. The dowager's voice remained flat, emotionless. I learned then that sentiment is a luxury our class cannot afford. Duty must come first. Always. So you decided to inflict the same lesson on your grandson? I decided to protect him from the same pain. Something flickered in the dowager's eyes. His father married for love, a suitable match as it happened. Your predecessor was well-born, if not wealthy. But Sebastian chose her himself, against my wishes. And when she died giving birth to Linnea, it destroyed him. He spent 20 years mourning a woman he'd known for barely 5. He never remarried, never fully recovered, and never became the duke he should have been. He sounds like a good man. He was a weak one. The words came out harsh. Weakness of heart is still weakness. I could not allow Hadrian to inherit that same flaw. Love is not a flaw. Love is a weapon. The dowager's gaze sharpened. One that can be used against you by anyone clever enough to identify it. When I learned of your attachment to my grandson, I saw danger. A vicar's daughter, with no fortune, no connections, nothing to recommend her except a pretty face, and Hadrian's inexplicable devotion. The ton would have devoured you. They would have mocked him for choosing so far beneath his station. The Ashworth name would have suffered. So you removed the problem. I removed the risk. The dowager sat back. And I would do it again. I will always protect this family, Miss Whitmore, by whatever means necessary. The silence stretched between them, heavy with decades of manipulation and loss. Then why are you telling me this? Serene asked finally. Why reveal your methods if you'd simply repeat them? Because the situation has changed. The dowager's voice carried something that might have been resignation. The child exists. He wears Hadrian's face so obviously that denial is impossible. If I send you away again, Hadrian will follow. He's different than he was at 23. Harder. More determined. More willing to defy me. You can't control him anymore. I can control very little anymore. The admission seemed to cost her. My body fails me more each day. My influence wanes as his grows. I have perhaps 5 years left, if I'm fortunate. And I find myself confronting an uncomfortable truth. Sarun waited. I want to know my great-grandson. The words emerged reluctantly, as if dragged from somewhere deep. I want to see him grow. I want to teach him the history of this family, the weight of the name he'll carry. I cannot do that if you take him away. You're asking me to stay, after everything you did. I'm asking you to consider what's best for the child. The dowager's eyes hardened. Not for you, not for Hadrian, for Milo. He could have everything here. Education, opportunity, the finest life England can offer. Or he can grow up above a bakery in a provincial village, forever knowing he was denied his birthright because his mother couldn't forgive an old woman's mistakes. The manipulation was transparent, but the underlying truth was not. I haven't decided anything, Seren said carefully. Hadrian and I have an arrangement. I'm here to learn the truth, nothing more. Then learn this truth. The dowager leaned forward, her voice dropping. Hadrian's father left this estate deeply in debt. Poor investments, gambling, the slow hemorrhage of an aristocrat who cared more for poetry than ledgers. When he died, Hadrian inherited a title and almost nothing else. Seren's breath caught. Venetia Carstairs came with a fortune of £40,000. The dowager continued. That marriage would have restored everything, would have secured Linnea's future, maintained the tenants who depend on this estate for their livelihoods, preserved the Ashworth legacy for another generation. And Hadrian gave it up. For me, for a child he barely knows. Yes, the dowager's gaze was piercing. So ask yourself, Miss Whitmore, what are you willing to give up for him? The question echoed long after Seren left the room. She found Hadrian in the library that evening, surrounded by ledgers and correspondence. He looked up at her entrance, and something in his expression suggested he already knew where she'd been. She told you about the money. Yes. He set down his pen. It's not as dire as she made it sound. I've made arrangements, sold some properties in London, negotiated new terms with creditors. The estate will survive. Without £40,000, without selling my soul for it. He rose, crossing to stand before the fire. My father spent his life chasing happiness and never quite finding it. My grandmother spent hers sacrificing happiness for duty and ended up bitter and alone. I don't want either path. What do you want? He turned to face her, and the firelight caught the planes of his face, illuminating exhaustion and hope in equal measure. I want my son. I want answers. And I want... He stopped, seemingly unable to finish. What? I want you to stop looking at me like I'm going to hurt you. The words came out raw. I want one conversation where you don't flinch when I move too quickly. I want to earn back what my family's lies destroyed. Serene's chest tightened. That might take time. I have time, his voice softened. Do you? She didn't answer. She couldn't. The days settled into a rhythm that Serene had not anticipated. Mornings belonged to Milo. Hadrian had cleared his schedule to spend 2 hours each day with his son, teaching him to ride ponies in the paddock, exploring the grounds, reading picture books in the nursery. Serene watched from windows and doorways, unwilling to intrude, but unable to look away. Milo bloomed under the attention. Papa showed me a frog, he announced one afternoon, bursting into the sitting room with muddy boots and shining eyes. A real one. It jumped on his head, and he made a very funny face. Papa. The word struck Serene like lightning. She hadn't taught him that, had never imagined he would use it so quickly, so easily, as if the connection had always existed and simply needed acknowledgement. Did he? She kept her voice steady. That does sound funny. He said I could call him Papa if I wanted. Milo's enthusiasm dimmed slightly, for uncertainty creeping in. Is that all right, Mama? You look strange. I'm fine, darling. She pulled him close, pressing a kiss to his tangled hair. If you want to call him Papa, that's perfectly all right. Milo relaxed against her. I always wanted a papa. The other children in the village had them. I asked Mrs. Penny once if I could borrow Mr. Penny, just for a day, but she said it didn't work like that. Serene's heart cracked along old fault lines. No, my love, it doesn't work like that. Afternoons brought different challenges. Madame Fortier arrived with bolts of fabric and an army of assistants, transforming Serene's borrowed quarters into a workshop of feminine transformation. Day dresses in muted greens and soft blues, evening gowns in deeper shades, suitable for a woman of her station. Nothing too elaborate, nothing that would invite mockery, but everything of quality that whispered respectability rather than shouted ambition. Linnea supervised with relentless enthusiasm. The amber brings out your hair beautifully, and this cream will be perfect for the Kelworth dinner next week. Simple but elegant. Nothing that will give the gossips ammunition. I don't need all this. You need armor. Linnea's voice gentled. Society is a battlefield, Serene. The women you'll meet have been trained since childhood to identify weakness and exploit it. They'll search for flaws in your dress, your speech, your manners. They'll watch for any sign that you don't belong. I don't belong. You belong where my brother wants you. Linnea adjusted a sleeve with practiced fingers. And increasingly, I think that's here. He watches you, you know. When you're not looking, he watches like you're something precious he's afraid will disappear. Seren didn't know what to say. The truth was, she watched him too. She watched him with Milo, patient and present in ways she hadn't expected from a duke. She watched him in the library, poring over old correspondence with furrowed brow, searching for evidence of his grandmother's manipulation. She watched him at dinner, formal and controlled, revealing nothing of the warmth he showed their son. He was two different men, she realized. The Duke of Ashworth, cold and commanding, built to survive a world that showed no mercy. And Hadrian, the young man who had once promised her forever, broken but still breathing somewhere beneath the armor. Which one was real? Did either of them still exist? The answer came unexpectedly. One evening, long after Milo had been tucked into bed and Linnea had retired with a novel, Seren found herself drawn to the music room. She hadn't meant to play, hadn't touched a pianoforte in years, not since her father sold theirs to pay debts. But the instrument sat gleaming in the moonlight, and her fingers ached for the familiar comfort of keys beneath them. She played softly, an old melody her mother taught her before the fever. Notes carrying memories of better times. She didn't hear him enter. I remember that song. She startled, the music dying abruptly. Hadrian stood in the doorway, his cravat loosened, his jacket discarded somewhere. He looked younger without the formal armor, more like the man she remembered. You used to play it in the vicarage garden, he continued, when you thought no one was listening. You were listening? Always. He moved into the room, settling into a chair near the pianoforte. I would sit behind the hedge like a lovesick fool just to hear you play. My father thought I'd gone mad, slipping away from lessons to lurk in churchyards. You never told me. I never told you many things. His voice dropped. I should have. Should have declared myself sooner. Married you before grandmother could interfere. Should have protected you. You didn't know. I should have known. The self-recrimination in his voice was sharp. I should have questioned when the letters stopped. Should have gone to the vicarage myself instead of sending servants. Should have trusted what I knew of you instead of believing the lies. Why didn't you? The question hung between them, because believing the lies was easier. He met her eyes unflinching. If you had taken money and left, then the failure was yours. But if something else had happened, if you'd been taken from me, then the failure was mine. I couldn't face that. Not on top of losing my father. Not while drowning in responsibilities I wasn't ready for. Seren's fingers drifted across the keys, not playing, just touching. We were both so young. Too young. But age doesn't excuse cowardice. He leaned forward. I found something today, in my grandmother's correspondence from that year. Her hand stilled. Letters, addressed to me, in your handwriting. His jaw tightened. They'd been opened, read, and stored in a locked drawer in her study. She kept them, Seren, all of them. Every word you wrote, she kept as trophies. The revelation stole her breath. She told me my letters were being returned, that you refused to receive them. And she told me you'd taken money and vanished without a trace. His voice roughened. We were both lied to, manipulated, made to believe the worst of each other. What did the letters say? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded paper, worn soft at the edges. This was the last one you sent. He didn't offer it to her. Written 3 weeks after you arrived in Whitby, before you knew about Milo. I remember. The memory was bitter. I begged you to come for me. Said I would wait forever if you would just send word that you still wanted me. And I never saw it. His voice cracked, just slightly. 5 years, Seren. I spent 5 years believing you'd chosen money over me. And the whole time, you were waiting. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back. I stopped waiting eventually. When Milo came, I had to be stronger than hope. I know. He rose, crossing to stand before her at the pianoforte. I know you survived without me. Built a life, raised our son, became someone who doesn't need a duke to save her. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her cheek with gentle fingers. But I want to be there anyway. If you'll let me. She should be cautious, should remember the years of pain and struggle, should protect the heart that had learned to beat without him. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I don't know how to trust this, she whispered. I don't know how to believe it won't disappear again. Then let me prove it. His thumb traced her cheekbone. However long it takes. Whatever you need. I'm not going anywhere, Seren, not this time. The promise hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Behind them the fire crackled and settled. Outside, the stars wheeled through their ancient patterns. And somewhere in the house, a little boy slept peacefully, dreaming of frogs and ponies and the papa he'd always wanted. The Kelworth dinner arrived like a storm on the horizon. Seren stood before the mirror in her chamber, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. The amber gown Linnea had chosen transformed her into someone else entirely, someone who might actually belong in the world she was about to enter. You look beautiful, Mama. Milo sat on her bed, watching the preparations with fascination. Like a princess. Not a princess, darling. Just a woman in a borrowed dress. It's not borrowed, Linnea swept in, resplendent in rose silk. It's yours. Hadrian paid for every stitch. She caught Serene's expression and softened. Don't look so stricken. He wanted to. Said it was the least he could do after 5 years of you clothing Milo alone. The reminder of all those years, counting coins for fabric, mending the same garments until they fell apart, struck Seren silent. Ready? Linnea asked. No. She would never be ready for this. Yes. During the carriage ride, Linnea provided relentless intelligence about the guests. The Marchioness is a viper, but she respects strength. Don't let her intimidate you. Sir Aldous will flirt outrageously. Ignore him. The Thornberry daughters will try to befriend you to gather gossip. Smile and reveal nothing. You make it sound like warfare. It is warfare. Hadrian spoke for the first time since they'd departed. He sat across from them, formal in dark evening clothes, his expression unreadable. Every word you say tonight will be analyzed, every gesture judged. They'll watch how we interact and draw conclusions about our arrangement. What conclusions do you want them to draw? His eyes met hers in the dim carriage. That you're under my protection. That any slight against you is a slight against me. The words sent warmth spreading through her chest, dangerous and unwelcome. Kelworth Manor blazed with candlelight as they arrived. Footmen in powdered wigs lined the entrance. Music drifted from within, elegant and restrained. The creme of county society had gathered to witness the scandal of the season, the Duke of Ashworth and his mysterious guest. Serene's hand trembled as she placed it on Hadrian's offered arm. Steady, he murmured. I'm right here. They entered together. The whispers began immediately. That's her. The one from the village. I heard she was a servant, or a governess. The child is unmistakably his. Everyone's seen them riding together. Seren kept her chin high, and her expression serene, channeling every lesson Linnea had drilled into her over the past week. She was an actress playing a role, nothing more. The Marchioness of Kelworth descended upon them within moments, her silver hair piled high, her eyes sharp as cut glass. "Your Grace." She offered Hadrian a perfunctory curtsy before turning her full attention to Seren. "And this must be the infamous Miss Whitmore. We've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope." Serene's voice emerged steady. "Oh, things of every sort." The Marchioness smiled thinly. "You've caused quite the stir, appearing so suddenly with a child in tow. Some are calling it romantic. Others use less charitable words." "And which word would you use, my lady?" The Marchioness paused, reassessing. "Interesting. I would call it interesting." She glanced at Hadrian. "Your grandmother must be beside herself." "My grandmother's feelings are her own concern." "Indeed." The Marchioness seemed almost pleased by his coldness. "Well, Miss Whitmore, I do hope you'll enjoy the evening. It's not every day we get fresh entertainment in the county." She drifted away, and Seren released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "You did well." Hadrian's voice was low, meant only for her. She was testing you. "Did I pass?" You didn't flinch. That's more than most manage. The dinner itself was an elaborate affair of multiple courses and carefully orchestrated seating. Seren found herself placed between Sir Aldous Pemberton, who proved exactly as flirtatious as warned, and a quiet young baron who spoke mostly of his hunting dogs. Hadrian sat at the opposite end of the table, too far for conversation, but close enough for their eyes to meet across the candles and crystal. Each time they did, something tightened in her chest. After dinner, the guests retired to the drawing room for music and conversation. Seren was navigating a group of curious women when a familiar voice cut through the chatter. "Miss Whitmore, what a surprise." Venetia Carstairs stood before her, exquisite in ice blue silk, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Miss Carstairs," Serene kept her voice neutral, "I wasn't aware you'd be in attendance. The Kelworths are old friends of my family. I couldn't possibly miss their little gathering." Venetia's gaze swept over her with undisguised assessment. "That gown suits you. Hadrian always did have excellent taste in accessories. Is there something you wanted?" Merely to offer a warning. Venetia stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You've won a battle, Miss Whitmore, not the war. Society has a long memory. They remember that you arrived with a bastard child and no wedding ring. They remember that Hadrian cast me aside like refuse to chase your skirts. He cast aside an arrangement he never agreed to. He humiliated me." Venetia's composure cracked, revealing genuine fury beneath. "In front of everyone, my reputation is damaged, my prospects diminished, and for what? A vicar's daughter who couldn't even hold on to him the first time. I didn't lose him. I was taken from him. A charming story. I'm sure it plays well to the romantic fools who believe in true love." Venetia's lip curled. "But some of us know better. Some of us know that men tire of their toys eventually. And when Hadrian tires of you, when the novelty of playing house with his bastard wears thin, I'll still be here, waiting." Before Serene could respond, a hand touched her elbow. "Miss Whitmore." Hadrian's voice was ice. "I believe you promised me a turnabout the room." Venetia's face transformed instantly into pleasant neutrality. "Your Grace, I was just welcoming Miss Whitmore to county society. How generous." He didn't look at her. "If you'll excuse us." He guided Serene away, his grip firm on her arm. They walked in silence through the crowded room, out through a side door, into a small conservatory filled with potted palms and the scent of night-blooming jasmine. What did she say to you? His voice was tight with controlled anger. Nothing that wasn't true. Seren pulled free of his grip. She called Milo a bastard. She reminded me that I'm temporary. She promised to be waiting when you tire of me. I won't tire of you. You don't know that. You can't know that. The evening's tensions boiled over. We've been playing at reconciliation for 2 weeks, Hadrian. 2 weeks after 5 years of silence. How can you be certain of anything? Because I spent those 5 years trying to forget you and failing utterly. He stepped closer, his eyes blazing in the dim light. Though because I compared every woman I met to the memory of you and found them all wanting. Because when I saw Milo in that village square, the first thing I felt wasn't shock or horror. It was hope. Hope? That maybe I hadn't lost you completely. That maybe some part of what we had survived. His hands cupped her face, gentle despite the intensity of his words. I know this is fast. I know you have every reason to doubt me. But I am not playing at anything, Seren. This is real. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe. Venetia said society will remember what I am. Society will remember what I tell them to remember. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You are the mother of my son. You are a woman of grace and intelligence. You are the only person in 5 years who has made me feel anything other than duty and emptiness. That's not enough, not for a duchess. Then it's a good thing I'm not looking for a duchess. His voice dropped. I'm looking for you. He kissed her. Not gently, not carefully. He kissed her like a man drowning, desperate for air. His hands tangled in her hair, scattering pins, destroying Linnea's careful work. She kissed him back with equal fervor, all the longing and confusion and want pouring out through lips and tongue and clutching fingers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing ragged, his forehead rested against hers. Stay, he whispered. Not for Milo. Not for duty. Stay for this. Her answer caught in her throat. A sudden crash from the doorway made them spring apart. The Marchioness of Kelworth stood in the entrance, a broken champagne glass at her feet, her eyes wide with scandalized delight. Well, she breathed. This is certainly more interesting than the music. Behind her, a cluster of guests gathered, drawn by the commotion, including Venetia Carstairs, whose smile could have curdled cream. The carriage ride home was silent. Linnea had been collected from a confused conversation with Sir Aldous and bundled into the vehicle with barely an explanation. She sat now, watching her brother and Seren with undisguised curiosity. Someone should probably tell me what happened. Nothing happened. Hadrian stared out the window, jaw tight. The Marchioness looked like she'd witnessed the second coming. That's not nothing. We were seen. Seren's voice was hollow. In the conservatory. Kissing. Linnea's eyes went wide. Then she laughed. That's it? Oh, you were kissing? I thought someone had died. She leaned back against the seat. Hadrian, honestly. The way you're brooding, I expected something truly scandalous. It is scandalous. Seren wrapped her arms around herself. An unmarried woman, kissing a duke in a darkened conservatory. The gossip will spread across 3 counties by morning. The gossip was already spreading, Linnea shrugged. At least now, they'll have something concrete to discuss. Before, it was all speculation about your mysterious past. Now it's confirmed romance. That's an improvement. An improvement? Hadrian finally turned from the window. Serene's reputation is no worse than it was when she arrived with a child who wears your face. Linnea cut him off firmly. Society already assumed the worst. Now they know you actually want her. That's protection, not scandal. The logic was twisted, but not entirely wrong. They arrived at Ashworth Park near midnight. Seren went straight to Milo's room, needing the comfort of her son's presence. He slept peacefully, small fist curled against his cheek, entirely unaware of the chaos surrounding his existence. She didn't know how long she stood there watching him before Hadrian appeared in the doorway. "May I come in?" She nodded. He crossed to stand beside her at the bed, looking down at the child they'd created in stolen moments of young love. "He's perfect," Hadrian said softly. "I know I've said it before, but I can't stop thinking it. He's absolutely perfect. And I missed everything. His first words, his first steps, every fever, every nightmare, every small joy. I tried to tell you." The old grief rose unbidden. "When I first knew about him, I wrote pages and pages, trying to find the right words. And my grandmother stole them. Yes." He was quiet for a long moment. "What would you have wanted? If the letters had reached me? If I'd come for you in Whitby?" "Marriage." The word emerged without hesitation. "I know it seems impossible now, but back then, I still believed it could happen. That love was enough to bridge any gap. And now? Now I don't know what I believe." She turned to face him. "Tonight, in the conservatory, I wanted you. I can't deny that. But want and wisdom are different things. What would wisdom tell you? To leave. To take Milo back to the village before this goes any further." Her voice cracked. "To protect my heart from breaking again. And what does want tell you?" She couldn't answer. The words tangled in her throat. I'm fighting between self-preservation and the desperate hope she'd buried years ago. Hadrian reached for her hand, lifting it to his lips. "I have something to show you." His voice was rough. "Tomorrow. Will you trust me that far?" She shouldn't. Every instinct screamed caution. Yes. The next morning, after Milo had been dispatched to riding lessons with the groom, Hadrian led her through corridors she hadn't yet explored, past the family wing, past the gallery of ancestors, into a section of the house that felt older, quieter, thick with dust and memory. He stopped before a door that looked no different from dozens of others. "This was my mother's study." He pushed it open. "No one has entered since she died." The room beyond was frozen in time, a writing desk scattered with papers, books left open to pages never finished, a shawl draped over a chair as if its owner had just stepped away. Father couldn't bear to change anything. After she was gone, he simply locked the door and walked away. Hadrian moved through the space with careful reverence. I used to sneak in sometimes when I was young, just to feel close to her. "Why are you showing me this?" He stopped before a portrait hung above the fireplace, a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, painted in the style of 30 years past. "Because I want you to understand what I'm offering." He turned to face her. "Not just wealth or title, not just legitimacy for Milo. I'm offering history, memory, a place in something larger than either of us. Your family, our family, if you'll have it." He took her hands. "My mother would have loved you. My father, too. They believed in choosing happiness, in following your heart regardless of society's expectations. They would have welcomed you and Milo without hesitation. But they're gone. Yes. And what remains is complicated and painful and bound up with decades of mistakes." His grip tightened. "But it's real, Seren. It's mine to give, and I want to give it to you." She looked at the portrait of the woman who might have been her mother-in-law, at the room preserved like a shrine to lost love, at the man before her, stripped of ducal armor, offering her everything he had. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I. What if it doesn't work? What if we've both changed too much? Then we'll have tried." His voice softened. "We'll have given Milo the chance to know his father. We'll have answered the question that's haunted us both for 5 years. What question? What if? He released her hands to cup her face. What if the letters had arrived? What if I'd come for you? What if we'd been brave enough to fight for this? She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. I don't know if I can be a duchess. I don't need a duchess. I need you. The ton will never accept me. The ton can hang. He kissed her forehead. I've spent my whole life seeking their approval. It brought me nothing but a cold bed and a colder heart. I'm done performing for people who don't matter. She opened her eyes, finding his gaze inches away. If I say yes, she said slowly. If I agree to try this, truly try, what happens next? We take it one day at a time. We learn each other again. We build something new from the wreckage of what was stolen. His thumb traced her cheek. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll ask you a question that's been burning in my chest since I saw you in that village square. What question? His smile was soft, hopeful, terrified. You'll know when I ask it. 3 more weeks passed in something close to happiness. Milo flourished, growing bolder and brighter with each day. He rode his pony with increasing confidence. He learned to fish in the lake with Hadrian's patient guidance. He charmed the household staff and terrorized the kitchen cat with equal enthusiasm. Seren allowed herself to hope. She should have known better. The letter arrived on a gray morning, delivered by a rider in Carstairs livery. Hadrian was in his study with estate managers. Linnea had gone to the village. The dowager had taken to her rooms with a headache that may or may not have been diplomatic. Seren was alone when she opened it. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, and unfamiliar. Miss Whitmore, you do not know me, but I served in your father's household and later found employment with a family connected to the Ashworths. Through both positions, I learned truths that have burdened my conscience. The Dowager Duchess did not merely pay your father to send you away. She paid him to ensure you would never return. Part of that payment included monthly sums to maintain the fiction that you had taken money and vanished willingly. Your father received these payments for 3 years, until they stopped following the old Duke's death. He spent the money on gambling debts and whiskey. He died owing more than he'd ever been paid. But that is not the worst of it. Before he died, your father told me something in his cups. He said the Dowager had given him one final instruction when he sent you away. He was to ensure that any child you bore would never be connected to the Ashworth family. Miss Whitmore, your father knew about your son. He knew from the beginning, and he told no one because the Dowager paid him not to. I cannot prove any of this. I have no documents, no witnesses, but I thought you deserved to know the truth of the man who raised you. May God forgive us all. A friend, the letter dropped from Seren's nerveless fingers. Her father had known. All those years of struggling alone, all those nights, wondering if Hadrian would ever learn of his son's existence, all those prayers for help that went unanswered. Her father had known, and he had chosen money over his own grandchild. She was still standing there, frozen, when Hadrian found her an hour later. Seren, what's wrong? You look... He stopped, seeing the letter on the floor, picked it up. Read it. His face went white. This is from Venetia's household. His voice was barely recognizable. The Carstairs crest. She sent this. Does it matter who sent it? It matters if it's a lie designed to... Is it a lie? Serene's voice cracked. Did your grandmother pay my father to keep silent about Milo? Hadrian's jaw tightened. I don't know. But you suspect. He was quiet for too long. I need to speak with my grandmother. I'll come with you. Seren, I have a right to hear her answer. They found the Dowager in her sitting room, embroidery abandoned in her lap, staring out at the gray sky. She looked older than she had weeks ago, diminished somehow. She turned at their entrance and saw the letter in Hadrian's hand. Ah, a long exhale. So, it's come out. Serene's heart stopped. It's true then. Hadrian's voice shook. You paid her father to hide Milo's existence. I paid him to manage a complicated situation. He was your great-grandson. The words tore from Serene. My son, an innocent child, and you paid to have him erased like a mistake. I paid to protect this family from scandal. The dowager's voice hardened. The vicar's daughter, pregnant with the duke's bastard? Can you imagine what the gossips would have done? The child would have been a target for every fortune hunter and scandalmonger in England. He was a baby. He was a complication. The dowager rose, leaning heavily on her cane. One I handled as I handle all complications, quietly and efficiently. You handled my son like a business transaction. Serene's voice broke. And my father, my own father, he took your money and let me believe I was alone. Your father was a weak man with expensive vices. I simply used the tools available. The room spun around Serene. All these weeks of tentative trust, all the conversations about giving the dowager a chance, all the hope she'd allowed herself to feel, built on foundations of lies even deeper than she'd known. I can't do this. The words emerged hollow. I thought I could. I thought maybe we could build something from the wreckage. But it just keeps getting worse. Every layer I peel back reveals more betrayal. Serene. Hadrian reached for her. She stepped back. Your grandmother destroyed my family. Not just our relationship. My father, whatever he was, he might have been different if she hadn't given him the opportunity to choose money over his own daughter. He might have... She couldn't finish. I need to leave. The decision crystallized with sudden clarity. Tonight. I need to take Milo and go. Go where? Anywhere. Whitby, London, America. I don't care. Tears streamed down her face. Somewhere your family can't poison everything they touch. Serene, please. Hadrian's voice cracked. Don't punish me for her sins. I'm not punishing you. I'm surviving. She met his eyes, her heart shattering even as she spoke. That's what I've always done, Hadrian. Survived. While your family made decisions about my life, my son, my future, without ever consulting me. While everyone chose what was best for the Ashworth legacy and left me to pick up the pieces. I didn't know. I know you didn't know. But she did. Serene pointed at the dowager. She stood in this house for weeks, watching me with Milo, watching me fall for you again, and knowing the entire time that she paid my father to abandon us. Knowing that every word of welcome was built on lies she never intended to reveal. The dowager said nothing. Her face was stone. I loved you. Serene's voice dropped to a whisper. 5 years ago and again these past weeks. But I cannot build a life in a house where that woman holds any power. I cannot raise my son surrounded by people who view him as a complication to be managed. Then I'll send her away. And she'll still be your grandmother, still be Milo's great-grandmother, and still be the woman who paid to have him erased. Serene shook her head. There's no future here, Hadrian. I wanted there to be. God knows I wanted it. But some wounds don't heal. She turned and walked away. Behind her, she heard Hadrian call her name. She didn't stop. Serene was packed within the hour. She moved through the green suite like a ghost, gathering only what she'd brought, and the few items Milo couldn't bear to leave behind. The fine gowns stayed. The jewelry stayed. Everything that marked her brief entrance into Hadrian's world remained. Milo watched her with confusion and growing distress. Why are we leaving, Mama? Because we need to go home, darling. But I like it here. His lower lip trembled. Papa said he'd teach me to fish with a proper rod next week. He promised. The word Papa struck her like a blow. I know. Not my love. But sometimes promises can't be kept. Did I do something wrong? She dropped to her knees, pulling him close. No, never. You did nothing wrong. This is grown-up trouble, and none of it is your fault. Will I see Papa again? She couldn't answer. The words wouldn't come. Linnea burst through the door, her face flushed with fury. You're actually leaving? After everything? Hadrian is downstairs destroying the study. Grandmother has locked herself in her room, and you're just walking away. I have to. No, you're choosing to. Linnea grabbed her arm. I read the letter. I know what grandmother did. But Hadrian didn't know. He's as much a victim as you are. I know. Then why are you punishing him? Because staying would kill me. Seren's voice broke. Because every time I look at your grandmother, I'll remember that she paid my father to pretend I didn't exist. Because every moment of happiness in this house will be shadowed by the knowledge of what she did. So leave the house. Let Hadrian find you somewhere else to live. Somewhere grandmother can't reach. There is nowhere she can't reach. Seren pulled free. She's the Dowager Duchess of Ashworth. Her influence extends across England. Do you think any house, any county, any corner of this country is beyond her manipulation? Then let Hadrian protect you. He couldn't protect me 5 years ago. He didn't know 5 years ago. Linnea's eyes filled with tears. He knows now. He's ready now. Please, Seren, don't take my nephew away. The plea struck deep, but Seren had made her decision. I'm sorry, Linnea. I truly am. She took Milo's hand and walked out of the room. The carriage was waiting in the courtyard. Not the fine Ashworth vehicle, but a hired coach from the village. Seren had arranged it while packing, sending word through a sympathetic footman who'd been paid to keep quiet. She was almost to the carriage door when Hadrian appeared. He looked wrecked. His cravat was gone. His shirt hung open at the collar. His eyes were red-rimmed, his jaw dark with the shadow of mist shaving. Don't do this. I have to. You don't. He blocked the carriage door. You're scared. I understand. I'm scared too. But running won't make it better. Nothing will make it better. Give me a chance to try. His voice cracked. One chance. That's all I'm asking. Milo tugged at her skirt. Mama, can we stay? Please. I don't want to leave Papa. The words shattered her. Milo, get in the carriage. But now. The boy's face crumpled, but he obeyed, climbing into the coach with the help of the driver, disappearing into the dark interior. Seren turned back to Hadrian. I loved you, she said quietly. Part of me will always love you, but I cannot survive being broken again. And this family breaks everything it touches. I'm not my family. You are, though. You'll always be. The Duke of Ashworth, with all the history and obligation and manipulation that entails. She touched his cheek, one final gesture of tenderness. I hope you find peace, Hadrian. I hope you find someone who can carry that weight with you. But it can't be me. She pulled away, climbed into the carriage, closed the door. Through the window, she watched him standing in the courtyard, watching her leave. The carriage rolled forward. No, she didn't look back. They stopped in the village to water the horses. Seren sat in the dim interior, Milo asleep against her shoulder, her own eyes too dry for tears. She had made the right decision. The only decision. Her heart would eventually stop feeling like it was being crushed. Eventually, the carriage door opened. Hadrian climbed in. What are you? I'm coming with you. He settled onto the seat across from her, his expression set with determination. Wherever you're going, whatever you're running from, I'm coming. You can't abandon your estate. I can do whatever I choose. That's the one benefit of being a duke. He leaned forward. I told you once that I wouldn't let you disappear again. I meant it. Your grandmother can rot for all I care. His voice was fierce. She destroyed both our lives for the sake of legacy and propriety. I refuse to lose you again for the same reasons. Hadrian, think about what you're doing. I've thought about nothing else for 5 years. He reached across the space between them, taking her hand. Every night in that cold house, surrounded by portraits of ancestors I never knew, I thought about you, wondered where you were, whether you were happy, whether you ever thought of me. I thought of you. The admission slipped out. Every day. Then stop running. His grip tightened. Stop protecting yourself from something I would never do. I love you, Seren. I've loved you since I was 23, and foolish, and convinced that nothing could ever separate us. We were separated. By lies and manipulation, not by choice. He slid from his seat to kneel before her, heedless of his fine trousers on the dirty carriage floor. I'm asking you to choose now, with full knowledge of everything that happened, with your eyes open to all the complications and challenges ahead. Choose what? Me. His voice was raw. Not the title, not the estate, not the life of a duchess, just me, Hadrian, the man who would follow you to the ends of the earth rather than spend another day without you. Milo stirred against her shoulder. Mama? His sleepy voice broke through the moment. Why is Papa on the floor? Despite everything, a watery laugh escaped her. Because Papa is very dramatic, darling. I'm being romantic, Hadrian corrected with mock indignation. There's a difference. Milo considered this. Mrs. Penny says romance is just drama with kissing. Mrs. Penny is a wise woman. Hadrian's eyes found Serene's. What do you say? Will you let there be kissing? It was absurd, ridiculous, the most inappropriate proposal she'd ever heard. Yes. The word escaped before she could stop it. God, help me. Yes. Hadrian surged up to kiss her. Milo made a disgusted sound. I'm going to tell Mrs. Penny she was right. They returned to Ashworth Park as dawn painted the sky pink and gold. Seren had expected the household to be asleep, but lights blazed in every window. Servants bustled in the courtyard. Carriages bearing unfamiliar crests lined the drive. What's happening? She clutched Milo closer, fear spiking. I don't know. Hadrian's expression darkened. But I intend to find out. They entered together, a united front, Milo between them holding both their hands. The entrance hall was crowded with people Seren didn't recognize, some well-dressed men and women, their faces marked with the particular blankness of those awaiting important news. Linnea rushed toward them, her face tear-streaked. Thank God. Hadrian, it is grandmother. She collapsed an hour after you left. The physician says... She broke off, choking. Where is she? Her rooms. They've called for the vicar. The vicar meant last rites. Seren's stomach dropped. Hadrian released Milo's hand. Stay with your mother. He strode through the crowd, parting it with the natural authority of his station. Seren watched him disappear up the stairs, torn between relief at not facing the dowager and unexpected grief for the woman who had caused so much pain. Linnea crouched before Milo. Hello, little one. Would you like to come with me? Cook has made biscuits. Milo looked up at Serene for permission. She nodded, and Linnea led him away, leaving Seren alone in a crowd of strangers. Miss Whitmore. She turned to find an elderly man in solicitor's black, regarding her with shrewd eyes. I'm Mr. Hartley, the family's man of business. He gestured toward a side parlor. If you have a moment, there are matters we should discuss. She followed him into a small room away from the chaos. The dowager's condition is serious, Hartley began without preamble. The physician believes she may not survive the night. Before she collapsed, she summoned me, gave me very specific instructions. Instructions regarding what? Hartley withdrew a sealed document from his case. Regarding you and the child. Serene's blood chilled. This is a revised will, executed this morning, before her collapse. Hartley's expression was unreadable. The Dowager has acknowledged Milo as the legitimate heir to certain family properties held in her personal name. Properties that cannot be contested by anyone else in the family. I don't understand. The Dowager was a wealthy woman in her own right. Her settlement upon marriage included several estates and a substantial fortune. These she has left entirely to your son. Hartley paused, along with a letter, which she asked me to deliver to you personally. He handed her a sealed envelope bearing the Ashworth crest. Serene's hands trembled as she broke the seal. Miss Whitmore, by the time you read this, I will likely be beyond either forgiveness or condemnation. That is fitting. I deserve neither. I have done terrible things in the name of duty. I have broken lives, destroyed happiness, and called it protection. Your father's weakness made him an easy tool, but I wielded him. That guilt is mine alone. My grandson loves you. I see it in the way he watches you, the way his face softens when you enter a room. He has not looked at anyone that way since before his father died. Perhaps never. I have spent my final weeks observing you, your grace under scrutiny, your devotion to your son, your strength in the face of revelations that would have shattered lesser women. You are not the match I would have chosen, but you are the match he needs. The properties I leave to Milo are not charity. They are atonement. They ensure that no matter what happens, your son will never want for anything. His future is secured beyond anyone's ability to threaten. Tell Hadrian I am sorry. I doubt he will believe it. I barely believe it myself. But for what it's worth, at the end, I wanted him to be happy. I simply didn't know how to allow it. Choose courage, Miss Whitmore. Choose love. Choose the happiness I could never permit myself to seek. Adelaide Ashworth. Serene read the letter twice. Then she climbed the stairs to the Dowager's rooms. The physician met her at the door, shaking his head grimly. She's asked for you specifically, but I must warn you, she's very weak. Inside, the room was dim, candles casting shadows across heavy furniture. The Dowager lay propped against pillows, her face gray and her breath rattling. Hadrian sat beside the bed, holding her withered hand. He looked up at Serene's entrance. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement. Grief. The complex tangle of family. Come closer, girl. The Dowager's voice was a whisper. Let me see you. Serene approached the bed. You read my letter? Yes. Then you know I meant it. The Dowager's eyes, dimmed but still sharp, found hers. I was wrong. About everything. I thought duty was all that mattered. But duty without love is just emptiness wearing fine clothes. Why couldn't you see that before? Because I was a fool. A ghost of a smile crossed the Dowager's face. A proud, stubborn, terrified fool. I lost my love at 18 and never recovered. I thought protecting my family from the same pain was kindness. It wasn't. It was cowardice. Her hand reached out, trembling. Serene took it. Be happy. The Dowager's grip tightened with surprising strength. Both of you, be happy, and raise that beautiful boy, and have more children, and fill this miserable house with noise and laughter. That's all I ask. I'll try. Do more than try. Can't succeed. The Dowager's eyes shifted to Hadrian. Marry her. Properly. Soon. Don't let society gossip steal a single day of happiness. I intend to, grandmother. Good. The old woman settled back against her pillows. Good. She died 20 minutes later, her hand still clasped in Serene's. The funeral was quiet. Family only, at the Dowager's request. Serene stood between Hadrian and Linnea at the graveside, Milo before them in the black suit that had been hastily commissioned for the occasion. He didn't fully understand death, but he understood solemnity as the vicar spoke. Afterward, in the drawing room, Hadrian took her hand. She was right, you know. About what? About marrying you properly. Soon. He turned to face her. I know this isn't the ideal moment. We're standing in mourning clothes, surrounded by grief. But I've already lost 5 years. I refuse to lose another day. Hadrian, marry me. He dropped to one knee, right there in the drawing room, with Linnea watching and servants hovering and their son's eyes going wide. Not because of Milo, not because of duty or legacy or any of the reasons my grandmother would have approved. Marry me because I love you. Because I've loved you since I was too young to understand what love cost. Because I want to spend whatever years remain proving that I'm worthy of you. Milo tugged at Linnea's sleeve. Is Papa being dramatic again? Romantic, Linnea corrected, wiping her eyes. This is definitely romantic. Serene looked down at the man kneeling before her, the Duke of Ashworth, brought to his knees in his own home, asking a vicar's daughter to be his wife. 5 years ago, this was everything she dreamed of. Now, it was even more. Yes, the word came out strong, certain. Yes, I'll marry you. He surged to his feet and kissed her soundly, to scattered applause from the servants, who had abandoned any pretense of not watching. Milo made a face. More kissing. Get used to it, Linnea laughed. There's going to be a lot more kissing in your future, young man. The wedding took place 6 weeks later, not in the grand cathedral of London, as society expected. Not with hundreds of guests and elaborate displays of wealth and status. They married in the small village church, where Serene's mother was buried, where her father had once preached before drink and weakness destroyed him, where she had been christened, and where Milo was now baptized as Milo Hadrian Ashworth, so legitimate son and heir to the Duke of Ashworth. The guests numbered fewer than 50. Family, close friends, the household staff who had become family in their own right. Serene wore a gown of ivory silk, simple and elegant. Linnea had wanted elaborate, but Serene chose restraint. This was not a performance for society. This was a promise. Milo served as ring-bearer, walking down the aisle with tremendous concentration, the pillow clutched in both hands. When he reached the altar, he looked up at Hadrian and whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, I didn't drop them, Papa. Laughter rippled through the congregation. Hadrian ruffled his son's hair. Well done, my boy. The ceremony was brief, traditional vows, spoken with genuine feeling. When the vicar pronounced them man and wife, Hadrian kissed her with tender reverence, as if she were something precious beyond measure. My wife, he murmured against her lips. Finally. Took you long enough. His laugh was pure joy. The wedding breakfast was held at Ashworth Park, transformed with flowers and candles into something warm and welcoming. For the first time in decades, the great house felt like a home. Serene watched their guests mingle, Linnea dancing with Sir Aldous, who looked thoroughly smitten. The Marchioness of Kelworth, who had surprised everyone by sending a genuine gift and warmer regards. The village folk who had known Serene when she had nothing, now celebrating her elevation with honest happiness. Milo bounced between groups, collecting treats and attention with equal enthusiasm. Hadrian appeared at her side, pressing a glass of champagne into her hand. Happy? Terrified, she admitted. What if I'm not enough? What if society never accepts me? What if... Stop. He turned her to face him. Society can go hang. You are enough. You've always been enough. It just took me too long to prove it. Your grandmother would be spinning in her grave. My grandmother would be secretly pleased, he smiled. She wanted me happy. She just didn't know how to allow it while she was alive. Perhaps she's learning now. Seren leaned into him, letting his strength steady her. I love you, she said. I never stopped, even when I wanted to. I know. He kissed her forehead. I love you too. Through everything. Beyond everything. Milo appeared at their feet, tugging at Hadrian's trouser leg. Papa, Mrs. Penny says she's going to make the biggest plum cake anyone has ever seen for my birthday. Can I have a pony to go with it? Hadrian laughed and swept the boy into his arms. You already have a pony, but I need another one, for emergencies. What kind of emergencies require 2 ponies? Milo considered this with great seriousness. The important kind. Seren watched them, her husband and her son, 2 pieces of her heart walking around outside her body. This was what she'd dreamed of in those dark nights above the bakery. What she'd thought lost forever when the letters went unanswered. What she'd stopped believing was possible. A family. A home. A future. Not without complications. Not without challenges. The Tun would whisper. Old wounds would resurface. The shadow of the Dowager's manipulation would linger for years, but they would face it together. She looked out the window at the grounds of Ashworth Park, unrolling green and gold in the afternoon light. Somewhere in the family plot, the Dowager rested beside her son and daughter-in-law, and generations of Ashworths before them. Someday, Seren would rest there too. Part of the history she'd never thought to belong to. For now, she was content to be alive. 1 year later, Seren woke to sunlight streaming through familiar curtains and the weight of an arm across her waist. Happy anniversary. Hadrian's voice was rough with sleep. She turned in his embrace, pressing a kiss to his jaw. Has it only been a year? Only a year. And yet somehow, you've completely transformed my life. He pulled her closer. This house, my sister, my son, all of it better because of you. Flattery will get you everywhere. I'm counting on it. Before he could demonstrate exactly what he meant, so the door burst open. Milo launched himself onto the bed with the energy of a 5-year-old who had been awake for hours. Mama! Papa! I caught another frog! Where is this frog now? Seren asked with resignation. In my pocket! Please tell me it's your outer pocket. Milo's guilty expression answered that question. Hadrian laughed, gathering the boy between them. You're a menace. Do you know that? You say that every day. Because it's true every day. Linnea appeared in the doorway, her expression exasperated. There you are. I've been searching everywhere. The frog is in the breakfast room now, by the way. Cook is not pleased. I'll handle it. Hadrian pressed a kiss to Seren's forehead, then Milo's, and swung out of bed. Seren watched him go. This man who had once been a stranger in a village square, who had become her husband and partner and home. Milo snuggled against her side. Mama? Yes, darling. I'm glad you didn't leave that time, when you almost went away. Her throat tightened. So am I, my love. Papa was really sad. Aunt Linnea said he was going to chase us forever, until you said yes. Did she? She said Ashworths are very stubborn, that they never give up on the people they love. Serene thought of the Dowager, who had stubbornly protected her family in all the wrong ways. Of Hadrian, who had stubbornly loved her across years and lies. Of Milo, who had stubbornly bonded with a father he'd only just met. Perhaps stubbornness wasn't always a flaw. Perhaps sometimes it was the truest form of love. Come on, she took Milo's hand. Let's rescue Cook. They walked together through the halls of Ashworth Park, and past portraits of ancestors who no longer seemed so disapproving. Past windows, overlooking gardens where Milo had learned to run. Past the library, where Serene had first glimpsed the man beneath the Duke. In the breakfast room, Hadrian was negotiating with Cook, while Linnea cornered the frog behind a soup tureen. Their family. Complicated, imperfect, built on ruins and rising still. Serene wouldn't have it any other way.